Good morning, everyone. It's a very happy day at the Googleplex today. It's our distinct pleasure to introduce Dale Chihuly, who will be speaking to us today. Dale revolutionized the studio glass movement, and today his team, his studio, continues to push the limits of glass. He's like an expert maestro that leads the direction of some of the world's most famous glass art. In fact, no museum in the United States or in the world can have a complete exhibit on glass without a piece from Dale's studio. And his work has been featured in pretty much all over the world, everywhere from the Victoria and Albert Museum in London to the most recent one, which is the De Young Museum here in San Francisco. And I actually toured the exhibit last weekend, and I must say it's simply amazing. So I highly recommend that you come visit. In addition, we have a special Google connection. Google and Dale's studio are both highly creative organizations that really revolutionize the world, and Dale was kind enough to design an artist theme for the iGoogle homepage. So you can bring a piece of Chihuly to your desktop today. I know it's on mine, so we really appreciate that. Now, during Dale's discussion, we're going to show some brief video clips, and then we'll have some Q&A afterwards. And so for the purposes of our YouTube and our virtual audiences, we ask that you please use the Q&A mics. Afterwards, we have time for a brief signing as well down in the corner over there. And so as he shares his culture of creativity with ours, please join me in welcoming Dale Chihuly. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Dale Chihuly, and I'm from Tacoma, Washington, where I was raised and went to school. I wasn't a very good student. Unfortunately, my brother was killed in the Navy Air Force when I was 15, and my father died the following year, and it made me very close to my mother, and she really wanted me to go to college. My mother and father hadn't gone to college. I didn't want to go. I really wasn't interested, but I went because of her, and by chance that first year, I designed her basement into a little den and bar. And I thought I'd done a great job, so I transferred to the University of Washington to study interior design. And along the way, I got interested in glass and built a little studio and had a little oven. And by the time I got out of school and went to work for a designer, one night I blew a piece of glass. I'd never seen glass blowing before. And so from that moment on, I wanted to be a glass blower. And the University of Wisconsin in Madison had just started the first glass blowing program in the country. And I went to Alaska, saved my money to go to graduate school. And from there, I went on to Europe and studied glass in Venice, Italy. And then I went to the Rhode Island School of Design, which is the largest and oldest art school in the country. And I started a glass program there, as well as starting a glass blowing school outside of Seattle, Washington. And when my income from gallery shows matched my salary, which was $18,000 a year, I quit teaching and moved back to Seattle and started working out on my own. And I've done a lot of exhibitions around the world. I'm going to show you parts of 4 different ones. And after I show you the segments are about 5 minutes each. And when I show you the segment, when we stop, I'll see if you have any questions at that time. And we'll keep going like that until we've gone through the 4 segments, and then we'll take some more questions if you'd like. So if we can start, what's the first one, Mark?
Venice.
Venice, Italy, where I was lucky to be able to do an exhibition putting my glass over the canals of Venice and in special spots in Venice. And we had traveled to 4 countries before we went to Venice to make glass, mostly chandeliers, and then we shipped everything to Venice. What about that? Can you turn the lights on?
You know, this project was sort of started off by Chihuly over Venice, chandeliers hanging in Venice. So we started by going to the first country, Finland, and then that was so, you know, inspiring and so interesting and so unusual and different from anything I'd ever done, that we then went on to the next country, Ireland, and then Mexico, and brought all those chandeliers, put them in all those containers that you see on the other side of Venice. Hundreds of factories on this little island, which is about a mile long. And we're going to see a couple of them working today. We're going to work in Pino's shop and have Pino and Lino working there. They're going to be working separately, side by side, making chandelier parts. And from that, we'll try to make a nice piece. Working with Pino and Lino together or separately is an extraordinary experience. I mean, you're talking about 2 of the most gifted glassblowers, not just in the 20th century, but I think in all times. I mean, I think these are two of the really extraordinary masters in the history of glass.
All right. Any questions about that? Or should we go on to let's see. Does he need a microphone?
I've seen some of your art I haven't personally seen it in the outside, but I know of pictures where you place your art out in the outside, and especially with, the idea of like the holy art object, but especially something so fragile. Has that ever led to like bad consequences? The fact that you've got these exposed to the elements, or just in a public arena? I mean, it's very delicate glass, often a little high up the ground, but has that ever led to bad consequences?
No, we've experimented with what kinds of shapes would break or not break. Kind of like a pop bottle. You could leave that outside and it'd probably never break. And so we don't do a lot of pieces outside permanently, but we do some.
Hi, I'm interested in what you did in collaboration with the Venetian glass artist. Did you actually work on pieces that were combined structures of both of you, or
I've worked with Venetian glassblowers for about 20 years, and I've never made it as a collaboration. I've always had them make what I want, and that what you saw there was was very unusual in that they were both making something that I want, and then putting them together. Mostly I work with the Venetians in my studio in Seattle, but the one you saw here, we were in Venice. And those are two of the greatest glass blowers that have ever lived. They're unbelievable craftsmanship. It's wonderful. Let's see, I guess where are we now?
So when you position your pieces in the external environments, how do you choose like what piece will look beautiful in certain locations?
I'm sorry, I didn't get all that. How do I choose what I'm going to put in my exhibitions?
No, when you're putting them outside, like what influences your decision of where to position and which pieces?
Oh, that's just walking around, and I do a lot of shows in botanical gardens, and they have both inside and outside spaces, and I just walk around and think about where I'd like to put a piece, and then we put it up, and I see if I like it as much as I thought I would, or we take it back down, and but that's one of the reasons I like working outside is that there are so many great places that you can put things outside. Whereas when you work inside, like we are, at the De Young, we're limited to sort of working within a box. I do a lot of things within that box to change it, and so that helps. But it's not always easy to work in a museum.
Hi, thank you for coming. In the video, it looked like there were some teams making all of the glass at once, and I wondered if you could talk to us more about the teams that you employ and sort of what you found to be your optimal size of a team. I know here at Google, I think it's the size 7 is a good team for us, so do you use 7, more or less?
In terms of the glass blowing, because I have teams for doing a lot of different things, and I have about maybe 15 different departments in my studio. And the glass blowing team, usually has about a minimum of 7. And the more complicated the piece, the larger the team. And the biggest team I've ever worked with, and probably was a few more people than I needed, was maybe about 16. But I would rather have some extra people than not enough when we're working. And then there's a team for, after the glass is blown, it gets sent to a different studio, and there's a team of people that mock it up into a chandelier or a tower or ceiling. And those teams can be broken down to different sizes. They don't all work together. And it might probably anywhere from 3 or 4 to 7, something like that. And then we have a team, then the glass is packed. We pack the glass in containers, in cardboard boxes. Then it's shipped to wherever, like for example, Venice, and then we unpack it. So we're the only ones that handle the glass. No one else handles it at all. And with a container doesn't move around much when it's being shipped. So it's if we were shipping air freight by FedEx or something, it'd get handled a lot. So we try not to do that. I have a team of about 7 people probably that's what we call registration, trying to keep track of where all the pieces are and other things for making books and movies. There's a kind of a publishing arm called Portland Press that makes books and videos and prints and a few other things, and that's about 12 people. So the teamwork, it's all teamwork of one kind or another. But there's only about 10 or 12 glassblowers that are permanently employed to blow glass. And we just did a really good video. If you want to, we can send a couple up here, and that's and you can see it shows pretty well how it's done. And that video is about to be turned into a Blu-ray. Now I don't know what's better, a Blu-ray or HD. I asked people, and they say, oh, they're about the same. And then I said, well, why are they paying us then to turn our HD video into a Blu-ray? Okay, well, we got one more?
Yeah, excuse me.
One more.
Yeah, given the glassblowing teams that you work with who have their own skills, is there, from your point of view, is there a lot of change from your initial conception of a piece to are you surprised?
Well, you know what I do is I make a drawing for the piece, a 20 by 30 inch watercolor paper drawing, and I pin that up on the wall for them in front of the furnace. And usually they understand pretty much what I'm trying to say. And the color is being done by people earlier on. That's one of the parts of the teamwork is each person kind of does what they're good at. And the master, or the gaffer, we often call him, he only does the ending of the piece. But he's in charge of it, the whole team, really. And of course, the more he works with that team, the less he has to communicate with them. They know what they want to do. If I feel that somehow the master didn't get what I wanted, I do another drawing that looks kind of like the one I put up before, and see if he gets it that time. But I'm happy to get whatever I can. Also, I mean, there's such an extraordinary skill, and they've been very good about with this glass school that I mentioned to you, Pilchuck. From the very beginning, we brought over great masters from Europe, to act as teachers so we could learn more. And they, you know, they were very willing to come over. And like Lino Taglia Pietra, one of the guys you saw, he came over frequently and then eventually started working with me and came over about 5 times a year. And the other glassblowers in Venice were sort of pissed off that he was, you know, teaching us all how to do things, because it's not easy to learn these tricks of the trade. But Lino didn't care, and Pino didn't care at the end of the day. And we had glassblowers coming in from every important glass center. And now, it's hard to believe, mostly because of Pilchuck, but there are now more glassblowers in Seattle than there are in Venice. And some of them are really, really good. And it's dying down in Venice. You know, each year more factories close. I don't know, I've never really been able to figure out exactly why it couldn't remain as it was, but a lot of different things like unions and the sons wanting to go to college and not go in the glass shop. So in a way, they have transferred all their information about glass over to us. And Seattle is kind of the mecca for where this is being stored. And if you were an aspiring glass artist, glass blower, whatever, and you live down here and you wanted to learn about glass, you'd probably move to Seattle, because we've got different other schools. We've got, you know, some of the great master glass blowers there. Lino now has a condominium in Seattle. All right, shall we go ahead for Gardens in Glass? Well, I mentioned to you that I've done a series of exhibitions in gardens, and this will show you what some of that looks like. That's me.
You know, have a love of greenhouses. I always have. In fact, I tend to call them glass houses or greenhouses. The conservatory term is more of an American one, but I use all those 3 words interchangeable: greenhouse, glass house, conservatory. I've always had an interest in gardens and conservatories. My mother had a big garden, and I went to school in architecture, and so I've always had an interest in glass houses. And so the idea of being able to bring my work, it's sort of inside but yet in nature at the same time, it's really a kind of an ideal background for my work. These things, they really belong in nature, these things. Look at this piece. Those were the last ones we did, I think, weren't they?
How about something in here?
Which one? This one right here?
No, this open space right here with this rock.
What I like is that tree.
Yeah.
What is that? Oh, it's
Like a philodendron.
climbing up a concrete column. I don't even mind that sprinkler. Yeah. 'Cause I like it to look like a greenhouse. I don't know much about plants, although my mother was a great, great gardener. And we always had beautiful gardens around the house. Perhaps some of the, my early influences very easily could have been the garden, because we had a modest house in an average kind of neighborhood, but the garden was very big, had 90 rhododendrons and about the same amount of azaleas. And so I think that flowers have probably had a big influence on me. This is important. Make them as big as we can. Bigger, the better. I don't know why I work so large. I very often push a series to its maximum size. I think sometimes I do it just to keep the glass blowers at the very edge of their technical ability, to keep the tension high, to make it exciting, to make it so that we don't know whether it's going to break or not break. If you know exactly what you're doing and you can make it every time, it's not going to be interesting. It has to have this tension if the pieces are going to be good. And so we constantly push ourselves. I push them, they push me. I try to get them to go beyond what they can do. It's more interesting that way. It's sure nice to get that waterfall, even if it's just temporary. If you get the stems up high, then you can show the whole waterfall. Could go anywhere in there, Tom. If we do a big show in the museum, we sort of go from gallery to gallery, and there's going to be something around the corner. Here, it's much more of a surprise. And of course, my work just looks like it's meant to be here. Such a great feeling to walk through a greenhouse and look and smell and the atmosphere. Every time I'm in a greenhouse, I say to myself, why don't I go into greenhouses more often, because they're so beautiful. I hope that it gets people that are interested in gardens and greenhouses to get them interested in art, and vice versa. So because lots of people are missing out by not going to conservatories, and that would be the majority of people probably. And they are, once you get inside here, it's another world.
Thank you again for coming today. It's really wonderful to get a chance to ask you all these questions. I think something that really attracts a lot of us to your work is the vibrancy of the color. And I was wondering, have these kinds of colors been in glassmaking for forever, or did you invent new chemical formulas for color, or do you just have a unique way of bringing the color out in the glass from color formulas that have always been around?
Well, we did, I think, invent one particular technique that really made a difference, in that you put one color on the outside of the piece, and then normally if you put another color on the inside of the piece, they would just sort of, smudge together and make whatever color, that might end up being. But we figured out that if we put one color on the outside, and then we put kind of an opaque white on next, and then another color on the inside, those two colors would remain totally separate. So you could have red on the outside and green on the inside, and you could never do that. There was probably no other way that could be done. We work with all the different colors that are available, because the colors are made in little cottage industries in Germany and Romania and New Zealand, and each one of them makes 200 or 300 colors. So, and they come in the form of a rod that weighs a couple pounds. Also, you can get it ground up so that it's kind of like sand. Different, we call it frit, different sizes of frit. And you can get it in powder form. Plus, we use gold leaf and silver leaf. And so there's, while that piece is being blown, there's color going on kind of all the time onto the piece. Because most of the pieces I do are pretty complicated with color. And it's true, you know, if you looked at an exhibition of my work and then went to a glass museum, we would be certainly using more colors than you would have seen in the glass museum.
Thank you for coming to Google. Quick question, how hard was it for you to let go of being the blower to moving to a director's role? And then secondly, what are the criteria for a piece to be dubbed a Chihuly? In other words, do you have to monitor the whole conception to production, or do you have to sign it? I'm just curious if you could speak to what qualifies as a Chihuly piece.
If it has my signature on it, it's a Chihuly piece. That's the one thing I don't let people do. And what was your first question?
How hard it was, that transition from when you were blowing glass to now being a director?
Well, I had, in 1976, I was in England with a friend of mine, and we were on our way to up to Wales, and we got in a car crash. And I ended up in the hospital there for 3 weeks. And then when I went back, I had to take it easier for quite a while. And then when I went back, once I felt I could get along okay, I started blowing glass again. But it was always difficult after that, because I had no peripheral vision and I had no depth perception. And if you don't have depth perception, it really makes things hard. I mean, it doesn't bother me now because I don't pay any attention to it. But if I were to go back in the glass shop and start to work, right away I would notice the things that I couldn't do very well. So, you know, as much as I wanted to be a glass blower, I knew already by that time that I was more interested in doing the exhibitions and working with the glass and doing installations, and so it really didn't take that much away from me. I just felt lucky, really, that I was alive. Yeah. Anything else?
Yes, I have a question. Where do you draw the line between other artists being inspired by your work and having them steal your ideas?
That's a really tough one, you know. You're better off just to, not pay any attention to it and just let people take what they want. I don't know how it works in your line of work. I think it's more complicated with what things that you guys do, where you can, stop somebody from doing certain things. But it's very hard in art to stop somebody from, just the idea of suing somebody, it's so complicated to begin with. Fortunately, when people want to buy, I could use an example of if you wanted to buy a great Ferrari that costs $300,000. Well, that Ferrari is probably made already as what we call a replica for $30,000, and they look identical. But most people don't want a $30,000 Ferrari. They want the real thing, and I'm fortunate that way. People even advertise showing some of my work and saying that this is very much like a Chihuly. There's no bones about it, and it might be a tenth of the price, but that's not what most people want to buy. They want to buy it. They want that signature.
Yes, I saw your fantastic exhibit at Phipps Conservatory in Pittsburgh, and I had the opportunity to see it both at night and then during the day. And I was wondering how you preferred to show your work, or which method it appealed to you.
Normally, when I do a show in a museum, we paint the walls gray, which they are at the De Young. And so it's fairly dark we don't have a lot of light on in the rooms, but we light up the pieces. So the piece will be lit, but really the room is pretty dark, and that looks the best. So at night in a green, in a garden, that'd probably be the same situation. They'd probably look better at night. All right, so we're gonna go on to the next one, which is one of my favorite shows. It's called Chihuly in the Light of Jerusalem. We went there for the millennium and took over about as much glass as we took to Venice. And there's a great kind of castle. What's it called, Mark? Something of David. The Tower of David, I guess. And it's a museum for the history of Jerusalem. But it has a huge courtyard, probably about 2 or 3 acres. And we were able to set pieces up in this courtyard, some very large pieces. And we were there for about, like at the De Young, we were there for about 2 weeks setting up the show, because it's a pretty big show. And but I think Jerusalem, we were there for about 4 weeks, and then we had to. Well, we were gonna take quite a bit of time to take it down, but that's right about the time they started having all the trouble in Jerusalem. So my crew, they didn't really want to go over to Jerusalem to take it down, and I really didn't want to force them to. So we asked them at the Tower of David. They helped us put the show up, and we asked them whether they thought they could take it down without us, and they said they could, and so we never went. We've never been back to Jerusalem since. I'm right now trying to arrange some sets that I've designed for a symphony, Bluebeard's Castle, to be able to go over there and show those sets. But nothing's set as yet. Am I right in thinking this? Are we not working?
We're still waiting a little bit on the DVD, but in the meantime, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about some of the temporal nature of your work and the importance of the specific moment. Like, for example, some of your earlier pieces no longer exist, and just the importance of the moment in your work.
That's true. Back when I really got started, when I was a student at the Rhode Island School of Design, I did a lot of installations, many of them with Jamie Carpenter, who was a student. And we would do installations in and around the Rhode Island School of Design, sort of like under the, what do you call the basement of a building. There's a lot of old buildings in Providence. And then we would light them up and photograph them, and we would often just leave the installations there. There's a lot of my work in Providence somewhere. That I know. And now we did one installation in 1971 at the American Craft Museum, and I've always liked that installation. It's called a Forest of Glass, and so I thought it might be nice to show it at the De Young, and it exists in a museum in Switzerland, and I was gonna. Well, I did get a hold of them and asked them if I could borrow it, and they said that I could. But then I got to thinking, well, you know, it'd be interesting to make the piece over, and I wouldn't also have to worry about. We ready? All right, Jerusalem, around 2000.
What is it about the light in Jerusalem? You know, the city of light. You can't explain exactly what it is. It's a feeling, it's a look. But it has it. It has this beautiful golden light that bathes Jerusalem.
It grew up, I think, in Chihuly's mind that the best place to celebrate the millennium would be Jerusalem and, of course, the Citadel in the year 2000. So Chihuly had an idea of using this material, the glass, that actually was founded in this part of the world, that experts said that the first blowing glass was done here, maybe in this city, and was brought from here to Rome, to Europe, and bring his kind of making glass, which is as far challenging as making glass could go to, and bring it back to where it belongs, where it all started. And we started to work on a project that when we started, none of us knew what it will be in the end.
So in the Citadel, I really wanted to take, you know, glass to its glorious height. You know, really make something special where the glass, you know, really spoke to the audience. I was overwhelmed, really. Could I take on the Citadel? Could I really put pieces in that could hold their own in this extraordinary structure? Every time I looked at the site, there was something else I wanted to do. Pieces got bigger, pieces got taller, pieces got wider. The next thing you knew, it was 14 installations that went as high as 46 feet high.
It's amazing to do this, to come from one sketch to something real. That's really big, because on paper it's only 8 inches tall, not 45 feet tall. But that's the challenge, to do it in a way that doesn't hurt anything or people, and to make it what Dale wants.
Take that one, Noel, and shove it in with the spears somewhere.
As for myself, when I saw the tons and tons and kilometers of iron come into the Citadel in the last few weeks, I was shocked. I was terrified. I said, what are we doing here? But day by day, when the things are being built, you realize that Dale had the perfect idea of what he was doing here. You can see the best composition of putting the right towers just in front of the old towers.
And the rebars, or the I-beams, are really going away.
Yeah, that one I-beam almost goes away a lot, doesn't it? Thank God.
It's okay?
Especially when the sun is going up and down. Those perimeter pieces on that axis, yeah, so in particular, get some ones sticking out for that shot.
like a catalyst. He starts a creative process. That process is picked up by a variety of people, depending on whether it goes to glass blowers or whether it comes to us or whether it goes to the architects or whatever. And then the ball sort of gets passed back to Dale, and he sort of examines this creative mass, you know, and either throws it out or likes what he sees or adds something to it or adds a lot to it.
Much of what I do comes from working and making things, looking at things, reacting to situations. Just like I worked when I was a glass blower, when I was making the glass myself. You know, you go in and blow the glass, and it takes you someplace different every day if you let it. I decide one day as I'm walking around trying to figure out where to put things, I decide I'm going to put the white tower right in the middle of the whole exhibition, below this arch. And everybody was very leery about it because when they unpacked it, people weren't really relating to the parts very well because they're mostly opaque. The white's opaque. But for some reason, it seemed like, you know, it needed to go there. And lo and behold, we put it there, and it looked fantastic. I love the idea that doing this project in Jerusalem, we were very near where glass blowing was invented and where glass was invented. And of course, what's left over from that, those early times, is Hebron still has a couple of glass blowing shops. You know, these glass shops had been there for something like 500 years, you know, still blowing glass in the same way, you know, not using a glass blowing bench, but actually turning the blowpipe on their legs, you know, with this little furnace. And you know, the furnaces were very much like they were 500 years ago, very crude. But of course, our shop and our furnaces are really very similar to what they were like 1,000 years ago in Venice. There's really not much of a way to improve upon it.
How many can they make by Tuesday?
How much do you want?
25 this size, 25 that size.
You know, to be able to do one of the pieces that from the Hebron glass blowers is something I sort of really wanted to do. I didn't know if we'd be able to have the time to pull it off, but we did. We were able to go over there for a day and see what they made and talk to them, and blow glass with them a little bit, and then order up a bunch of parts for an installation, which was the last one we did here. Initially, we weren't going to have as many pieces. They weren't going to be as large. But I wanted to be able to really, you know, get a grip on the Citadel so that when people came in, they could experience the exhibition and really feel the force and the magic and the joy of the glass to transform the visitor in some way if they were willing to be. You know, whatever happened in the Citadel, whatever we did, people wanted to see it. They came out to see it, and they came back to see it. They saw the light, they saw the color.
The popularity is really amazing. It's Christians, it's Jews and Muslims. It's tourists coming from all over the world to see the exhibition. It's like having a collage of all the kinds of people you can think of.
And I think this exhibition probably proved it to me, how much art is needed in people's lives.
We're going to go on to the next segment. which will be the last segment.
This project started in a way 5 years ago because I was giving a lecture up in Fairbanks, Alaska, and I showed my slides and I showed one of the old ice pieces in the lecture. And afterwards, some guy from the audience came up and said, I love ice too, and I'm an ice sculptor. And here near the Fairbanks, we have this extraordinary ice. That is the clearest, most beautiful ice you've ever seen, and it's it freezes 6 feet thick, and we cut out these big blocks. And he started showing me some photographs, and one of them was of a forklift with this monster cube of ice on it. The sculptures themselves didn't get my attention, but this cube of ice was just phenomenal. One of the greatest photographs I've ever seen. Now, I've since looked at that photograph, and it's, to see this cube on a forklift moving across the earth, it just inspired me to want to use it somehow.
Okay, stop him. You missed the shaker?
Well, actually, my first thought was I want to take the ice to the Negev Desert. That was my first thought, because when I think of desert, I think of Negev. There are a lot of great deserts in the world, and I've been to many of them, but to me, it's always Negev. It doesn't have to be that big a wall.
Right.
Keep this in mind. How many blocks we got?
26 now.
Okay, 26. If we only used, 15 or 18 of them for the wall, that would be enough. It's just become a big project. It was a little idea maybe, some months ago. I wanted to do some special piece here because so many people from around the world and in Israel and have come to see the project. I think I was told there were 250,000 people now have seen the installations in the Citadel, and it's a real honor for me to have people receive my work in such a way. This one's good. Yeah. We're going to build the wall up about 4 or 5 meters high, and then it's going to start to melt tomorrow. And we don't know how long. We don't know how long it's going to last. It might last a day. It might last a week. It might last 2 weeks. We really don't know because we've never worked with ice of this scale. I never know exactly, why I do things. I mean, it just comes from my gut. I see the relationship to the Citadel. I mean, look at those stones up there that King Herod or somebody put in there. Almost identical size stones as these blocks of ice. Imagine this being built, 2,000 years ago. I mean, what an architectural feat. What a city. To have water turn to crystal and have liquid glass turn to crystal. I mean, they're both an extraordinary phenomenon. Probably, two of the most incredible things, one an act of man and one an act of nature. And so I've always loved ice. You got green and blue right at the same blocks.
Well, that's just the wall. They're not going to work, all at once,
That's what you don't understand. I want them on all at once. All 40 on at once.
All right.
I want all the energy going in here at the same time. I just want it full blast light. This is sort of an ending party of the, the biggest project I've ever done in my life. Also the most rewarding project I've ever done in my life. And I wanted to do a piece that would be a bit celebratory. And also I wanted to do this ice, more than anything, I wanted to work with this ice. What I didn't understand and didn't know was the quality of the ice. Never having worked with it, I didn't know what the blocks were going to look like. But as you can see, I mean, there's all this variety within the blocks. Some of them are clear, some of them are fissures, some of them have bubbles, some of them, look like a laser beam had been shooting through them. You know, you have an idea, comes from somewhere, and it works. You know, it always comes from deep down somewhere. You don't know why you do it. You don't know what makes it work. You don't even know until afterwards, maybe, what happened. It just sort of happened.
All right, we have time for a few more questions. We have the Q&A mic up front, and I'm down here in the back.
The larger pieces like we saw in the center, the opaque, as well as the ones that you have in the Symphony Center in Seattle, how many hours from the original sketch to completion does it take your team? The cyclone type pieces.
Well, we almost are always working on several projects at the same time. So we never pay much attention to how long it takes. But, you know, it might be that the piece I did in Las Vegas for the Bellagio Hotel, where I did the ceiling of the lobby, you know, I might guess that would take a year. And a large chandelier, say 25 feet high, might take 3 months.
You talked about Jerusalem being one of your favorite exhibits. I know this has got to be hard because you have such amazing pieces of art. Do you have maybe the top 3 favorite pieces and why?
Boy, that's really hard. We've been asking people what's their favorite piece at the De Young, because there's 11 rooms plus 4 other pieces outside, and and there are certain ones that are more popular than others. But for myself, I'd have a really hard time, picking out 3, just from that one show. So I'm not a good one to say.
After an exhibition is over, where does the glass go? Do you keep it in storage? Do you break it? Do you sell it? Or
the glass, some of it might go, some of it might be sold and then would be shipped. Most of it would go back to Seattle. Even if we had plans for it to be in another exhibition, it would probably go back to Seattle and get repacked to go along with the other glass that was, and some of it, would just go in storage. And then in the future, we might use it again, or we might use it with something else. Because I do so many shows that aren't permanent, like museum shows and gallery shows and the garden shows. So a lot of that goes, sometimes we get lucky and the whole show is sold to the institution. That's the best kind.
Okay. Speaking about the future, I was just curious if you could tell us what's next, where you're going to be showing next, or country, city, museum.
Well, next week I'm going to Kuwait and to Dubai, and we're hoping to be doing a very large project in Dubai, 2 48-foot high chandeliers. And Kuwait is a private airport that we're going to perhaps put chandeliers throughout the airport. Let's see, what do we have? We're going to do, not this summer, but next summer, we're doing a very large show in Florence, where we're putting glass in the gardens above Florence. I don't know, what are we doing, Mark? Rhode Island School of Design, we're doing a show there. It's coming up soon. They've just added 45,000 square feet to the museum, and we'll be the first show in that museum. And then Phoenix Desert Botanical Garden. When is that? Is that in November? And I think that's up for 6 months. And that'll be a different kind of botanical show because it's all, cactus and stuff.
I was introduced to your work by channel surfing late at night, and the only actual pieces that I've seen in the flesh are when I cycled by the De Young and saw the Saffron Tower outside. Can you tell me how the documentaries, how good a job do they do of conveying what your work and the motivation behind it?
Well, we think this last one was pretty good. It showed a lot of the glass blowing, which we often don't show so much of the glass blowing, but more of the installation of the pieces. And it showed a lot of the glass artists and glass blowers that have worked with me over some like 35 years. And it interviews them a little bit. But it's a real challenge to, the Chihuly over Venice show was pretty good too. I think there are about, how many DVDs are there? It's about 8 DVDs.
And I just had one final question before we move to the signing over in the corner. How long does it take to dust and to maintain one of the large towers?
How long does it take to what?
To dust and maintain.
Just depends how clean you want it.
Awesome. All right, well, thank you very much. Thank you.